First and foremost, hello to our amazing small businesses and our partners who are joining us today. My name is Amanda Forrester, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC network. I want to just say or take a moment before we start to let you know that we are advocates for small business, and we know that you're the backbone of our communities and that you're under immense amount of pressure right now. We appreciate you and the value that you're adding. First and foremost, I want you to please take care of yourself and stick together. The Virginia SBDC network provides pro bono advising, low-cost training, and are here for every stage of your business, including disaster recovery, which is what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be covering the SBA economic injury disaster loans, and we'll talk through those, what the eligibility requirements are, and do a little bit of work on the application. A little bit of housekeeping before I get started with the presentation. If you have questions during the presentation, if you would use the Q&A function to ask those, and at the end, we have a panelist that will be answering those questions for you. Let's get started. So what businesses are eligible to apply for these economic injury disaster loans? You are eligible if you are a small business, a small agricultural cooperative, small aquaculture business, and most private nonprofit organizations are eligible. This does include businesses that are directly affected by the disaster, businesses that offer services directly related to the businesses in the declaration, and other businesses indirectly related to the industry that are likely to be harmed by losses in the community. A good example here is if you're a manufacturer of products, you may be eligible as well as the wholesaler and retailer of the product. So what is the criteria for loan approval? First is credit history. Just like most loans that are available to us, your credit will be part of the decision factor. You need to have a credit history acceptable to the SBA. We know that this is somewhat lenient, and we'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. They're also going to determine if you are eligible or if you have the ability to repay the SBA loan. That'll be based, of course, on your past profits. And then eligibility, you must be physically located in a declared county and suffered working capital losses due to the declared disaster, not due to an economic downturn or other reasons. To our knowledge to date, since you're calling in on the Virginia call, the counties and cities in Virginia have been declared for these loans. How much can you borrow? Eligible entities can qualify for loans up to $2 million. And the interest rate is 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofit organizations, with terms up to 30 years. What can you use these funds for? They can be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that you have that would otherwise be paid if it wasn't for the disaster. Just to note, these loans are not intended to replace lost sales or profits or for expansion of your business. This is where we're really pleased with the terms of the disaster loans. The disaster loans over $25,000 require collateral. That means that $25,000 and under does not require collateral. If you were to take a loan for $50,000, the first part of that would not require collateral and the latter part would. The SBA likes to take real estate as collateral when it's available, but will not decline a loan for the lack of collateral. You may have to offer a borrower's pledge or work with them to determine what other collateral could be available for the loan. These loans are different from other SBA loans. The funds for these loans come directly from the US Treasury. So you will not go to a bank to apply for these loans. You're going to go directly to the SBA, and you can reach their website at disasterloan.sba.gov. There is no cost to apply, and there's no obligation to take the loan if it's offered to you. So you can apply now, and if you're made an offer, you can decide at that point whether you want to continue with the loan or not. Again, just to clarify, the maximum unsecured loan amount is $25,000. If you have an existing SBA disaster loan, you can still qualify for this EIDL loan. The loans won't be consolidated, but you are eligible to apply. So what are some businesses that aren't eligible? Agricultural enterprises, and this is most of our food manufacturing businesses. And if you need to look that up, you can look at Section 18B1 of the Small Business Act to determine if you fall in that category. Religious organizations, charitable organizations, gambling concerns, casinos, and racetracks are not eligible. I do want to clarify with the charitable organizations. Earlier, I mentioned that private nonprofits are eligible. When you set up your nonprofit, it is set up as a private nonprofit or a public nonprofit. Most public nonprofits are considered charitable. How to apply? You apply directly from the SBA website, and the direct link is right here on the screen for you, disasterloan.sba.gov. I am going to take you there here shortly to show you what to expect. But if you need to take a moment to write down the customer service line for the SBA, do that now. It's 1-800-659-2955. They also have an email address available at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. We do know that they are inundated with calls and emails right now, so expect some delay in the answer, but we want you to have that information so that if you need to call, it's at your fingertips. Let's talk a little bit about some key points. The SBA has recommended that you submit your application as soon as possible. We do want to preface it that with, you want to make sure that you have all your documentation together and all of your finances together before you apply. I'll take you through what's going to be required as we know it today to apply. And you just want to make sure that you can fill those forms out completely. You're going to have the opportunity to download them, complete them, and then upload them. So you'll have some time to do that. You don't need to rush the process. If more funds are needed, you can submit supporting documents and a request for an increase at a later time. If you're offered a loan and less funds are needed, you can also request a reduction in the loan amount, not only at the time of the offer, but after as well. If your loan request is denied, you'll be given up to 6 months in which you can provide new information and submit a written request for reconsideration. Here is what you're going to see when you go to the SBA link for the disaster loans. Right in the center, you'll see the blue dot that says Apply Online. And when you click that, it'll take you to a page that gives you instructions on how to apply. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment so that I can switch over live to what the website looks like and take you through that process. Okay, I believe you could see my screen where I have the page that we just looked at pulled up. I'm going to pull open to make sure. Yes. When you click on the Apply Online, it's going to take you to this page. At the top, it says Office of Disaster Assistance, and there's a brief description of the loans and instructions to apply. This is the part we want to pay attention to just quickly today to let you know what's expected. Where it says download business forms, there's really two forms that you're going to need. Form 5 if you're a business entity, and Form 5C if you're a sole proprietor. The second document that's going to be needed is the disaster loan supporting information. You're going to completely fill out those documents once you download them and then upload them to the site. I'm going to scroll down so you can see that right here. Once you do that, your application is submitted. I want you just to look quickly at this additional forms. You're going to want to pay attention to these and possibly download them, look at them, and begin to fill those out. A loan officer will be in touch with you, and most likely these are going to be required for you to complete and upload. We do suggest that if you have this information now, you can complete it all right now and upload all of your documents during the application process. I want to show you quickly what Form 5, 5C, and the supporting information document look like. This is for business entities, the disaster business loan application that you will fill out completely with your business information. Make sure that you have all of that in front of you when you go to fill this out. This is the sole proprietor sheet that is very similar, a little bit different in the requests for information, but you'll fill that completely out if you're a sole proprietor. And then lastly is the loan supporting information. Very quick sheet here for you to complete for them and upload to the site. Once you do that, your application is considered submitted. I want to let you guys know that we're learning along with you, and this process did just recently change to what we've shared with you today. We'll do our best to stay up to date and make sure that you have up-to-date information, but if you go in today to apply, this is what you can expect. I'm going to close out here so that we have plenty of time to answer questions, and I'll turn it back over to Tracy to start feeding through those, and we'll jump on and answer as we can.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So we do have several questions, and if you all want to keep typing them into the question window, I will feed them to Amanda as they come in. Can small independent financial services firms apply since the loss of related to income base of the stock market volatility?
What a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Tom, do you? We have someone on our panel today that is more of a finance expert and tax expert. Tom, do you have any input for that?
I don't. Is this person, what type of business is it? Are you like a financial planner or what?
We'll see if they type back in.
Yeah, if they would type something back in, just so we can kind of see.
Yeah.
As long as it's being operated as a business and not disqualified with one of the other ones, I do not see why it would not. Obviously, I don't know enough of information about what your business is to tell you for sure. But if it's a legitimate business operating and it's not a disqualifier for the other reasons, I'm not sure why it would not.
Okay. I'll go ahead and take this question, and we'll reach back out to the SBA and see if we can get an answer to that. We are putting together a FAQs for our website at this point as well. What's the approximate timeline for receipt of loan proceeds once the application is submitted and approved?
That's a great question. Our understanding is the SBA is committing to a turnaround time of 21 days or 3 to 4 weeks before you'll have an answer for your loan, and then it takes about a week to go through the closing process.
How do we determine ability to repay?
We don't have the exact answer to that. However, with most loans, they'll be looking at the profit and revenues that you had before the disaster to determine, once you're full and running again, will you have the ability to repay the loan? We are fortunate that the terms are up to 30 years, so that could result in fairly low payments and increasing your chances of eligibility to repay the loan.
Do founders need to provide personal collateral?
If there's no business collateral available, if there's not a commercial, building that you have as collateral, yes, that would be the case.
We're a relatively new oyster farm that was planning to bring on help in April to assist with the oysters we started raising last year, and those that will start raising this year. Are we able to use the loan to help us bring on help still, or pay ourselves for the first time?
I believe so. Once you get the loan funds, if they help you operate day to day, that's what they're for.
How are these loans impacted by the CARES Act?
Great question. We are untangling that information as we speak. We receive it at the same time the public does and are trying to understand and work through that. We do know that more information will be available as the days go on, and we're expecting to understand it more clearly by Monday.
What did you say is the maximum loan amount?
Up to $2 million.
At the bottom of the instruction page is this: homeowners and renters must register with the federal. I don't think there's a question here, so I'm sorry for starting that. The person that typed in the question, I'm not sure if you had a question specifically, if you could follow up with what the question is.
I think what they're asking is at the bottom of the form, it's asking about that. As far as I know, that is not something that's supposed to be filled out. I'm not even sure why that's on there. I saw it this morning and questioned the same thing, because it sounds like that's more for a disaster loan, not for this loan.
Okay. Are real estate owners, landlords eligible to apply?
Yes, they are.
And the person said, thanks, you answered their question. This is, are venture angel investors funded companies eligible?
Wow, I'd have to understand a little bit more about the entity structure to answer that question.
Again, how long do we expect from filing to funding?
We understand that the decision process could take up to 21 days and closing typically takes 1 week. So we're estimating 4 weeks or more.
Is there a federal and state application, or is this application through your site?
The only application is through the SBA site. It's a federal-based program and funded through the U.S. Treasury, and the only way to apply for it is through the SBA website.
Are these the loans that I've heard of will turn into a grant if you don't lay off your employees?
They are not. That is the new legislation that was passed late last night that we are trying to untangle a little and get additional information for folks, but that is not what these loans are for.
Can you explain more about the use of the loans to pay employees and hire employees that have already been fired? I've also read about forgiving rent payments when payroll expenses have been met.
Sure. A lot of what you're hearing was part of the new legislation that has come out that we're still understanding and learning about. For these loans, you can use them to operate your business and whatever that means for you. So payroll is certainly part of that. But some of the other forgiveness and in relation to keep employees on or bringing employees back is not really covered in this loan specific.
Using the loan for payroll, is there a cap on who qualifies for us using the loan, and do we need to pay back the full amount of that amount or just payroll taxes?
Tracy, repeat that one more time.
Using the loan for payroll, is there a cap on who qualifies for us using the loan, and do we need to pay back the full amount of the full amount of that amount or just payroll taxes?
So I think that question is more, again, to the new legislation that's out. For these loans, you are, as we know it today, expected to repay them no matter what you use them for.
Okay. There are several questions about the credit scores you need to qualify for the loan, minimum credit scores.
I want to be transparent to let you know that the SBA has not been clear about that. But the information that we have is a score of 600 or above is preferred. However, we know that they have accepted loans under 600 credit score and of course over. But that's the guideline that we're giving folks now. I wouldn't let that stop you from applying. They're looking at everything all together to determine the eligibility of these loans. So understand that and know what your credit score is, but don't allow it to keep you from applying for the loan.
If we're a landlord with lost rents and our tenants also get SBA funding, will that be considered / reconciled?
Tom, could you answer that? Do you know?
I don't see why not. What they're basically saying is if they're getting, because typically you can't get an SBA loan, I mean a federal loan to pay a federal loan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has been resolved for this particular loan program. So I can't say 100% sure, but I know in the new loan program, I mean the CARES Act, that has been eliminated. So I'm going to make the assumption it applies to this, but that's something you can certainly bring up after you submit your package, but I think you would not going to have a problem with that.
Are startup businesses eligible for loans? I've just started a retail business, but my major buying trip will be canceled due to the pandemic.
Yes, you are eligible to apply. They are going to be looking for incoming sales prior to the disaster, though. So if there are no sales, that may not make it easy for you to have a loan offered to you. But it doesn't matter the start date of the business. On one of the forms, the last form that you're going to fill out, it does ask if you've been in business for an entire year prior to the disaster. It's okay to check no there.
When looking at ability to pay back, do they take growth trajectories, wow, I can't say that word, over a couple of years into consideration for growing young businesses, or is it limited to the prior year?
I wouldn't say that it's limited. I think they're going to look at all of that. And when you begin to work with an officer to fill out some additional information, there's going to be places for you to explain things like that. So I don't have a direct answer, not being an underwriter for the SBA, but they will be looking at your entire situation.
Should we have employees apply for unemployment, or would getting this loan to pay staff be a better option? When does interest start on the loan?
Interest will start at the time that you sign and close on the loan. We do understand that you can defer your first payment for up to 12 months, which is a great opportunity for many of you that will take some time to recover. The answer on letting employees go, obviously we'd love for all of our small businesses to keep their employees on, but if it means that you're going to go out of business because you can't make payroll for the 4-6 weeks that you're waiting on loan money, obviously it's better to lay them off to have a business for them to come back to. So it's certainly a decision that you don't want to take lightly, and if you want to reach out to one of your local SBDC centers, that's something that we are talking through with clients, is helping them make their decisions and looking at their options.
Can you confirm whether a 501c3 nonprofit organizations are eligible to apply?
If you're a private nonprofit, you are eligible. And I would encourage, if you're not sure, one, your accountant will know, but two, if you do a quick Google search for the difference between public and private nonprofit, there are some really good, just quick articles to get a better understanding if you are a private nonprofit versus a public, which would be charitable.
Let me throw something in about the new CARES Act. The new CARES Act this basically says if you're a C3, you can qualify for those loans.
Okay. I'm an independent dentist that operates as an LLC. Is 5C the correct form? Additionally, it asks for damaged property. Property is not actually damaged, so what should we do there? And do we need to provide our insurance company since they can't help us? Can the loan be used for self-pay? A lot of questions there.
Yeah, those are great questions. One, I'll answer, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tom. These are disaster applications. So in most cases, it's, a hurricane or a flood and there's damage to a building. Don't worry about filling that part out because, like you said, you don't have physical damage. But Tom, could you answer the other two questions?
Form 5 is the correct form to fill out, because if you're set up as an LLC, which if you're a dentist office, you're probably actually set up as a PLLC, you'd still set that up as rather than a sole proprietorship. The other question, I forgot what the other question was. Let me see. Talking about insurance.
Self-pay.
I'm sorry, what was it? Additionally,
Can the loan be used for self-pay?
Sure. That's part of your operating expenses. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I will say that one thing, everybody on the call, if you're currently in business, you certainly want to check with your insurance agent to see if you have business interruption insurance, to see whether or not your particular coverage might cover this particular incident, especially if you're required by law to close, then your business interruption insurance may cover you for that. That's something you'd have to check with your insurance company if you have that.
Going back to the question on timeline, you mentioned the timeline for approval and closing the loans. Would funds be immediately available after the loan closes? Is it wired?
Great question. I don't know that we know the answer to that. I think it will be once the loan closes, it most likely would be direct deposit like a typical loan would be. But we don't know anyone that's made it that far in the process to know exactly what that's going to look like. But they definitely want the money in your hands as quick as possible. So I'm sure that either a direct deposit or a wire would happen.
Are there some typical examples of collateral other than real estate?
Yeah, equipment could be used for that. And then, think about with real estate, it can also be your home. If you own your home, they do not have to take first or second or even third place. And our understanding is that you don't need to have the full equity available for real estate. They just want to have a placement on it. But the officer will work with you to kind of go through what are the different scenarios and what do you have available. Oftentimes it can be equipment.
Could also be accounts receivables, inventory, things like that.
Can businesses in Virginia impacted by COVID-19 that are not located in a county listed by the SBA in a disaster declaration be eligible?
If it's not listed yet, it will be. The entire state is declared a disaster, and what happens is each area has to go through and apply for the release of funds, and that just takes some time to happen. So if you don't see your county listed, it will be. So check back for that.
What type of proof of loss will the business be required?
Tom, do you have an answer for that?
At this point, it's not part of your initial application, so you don't really have to worry about an initial application. And this is where a discussion with the loan officer, because this is I have a feeling it's a moving target, because I think if it's being modified as what requirements they're looking for. They may be basing these loans, and we don't know exactly, but they may be basing the loans more on the fact that credit and ability to repay than showing that you've sustained loss. Now, surely they're going to ask for some sort of say, well, this time last year I was doing this business, and this time this year I was doing this much. It's certainly part of the consideration. But I don't think you're going to have to show more than year-to-date profit and loss statements, last year's profit and loss statements at the most.
What are the interest rates?
3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for the private nonprofits.
What should you put in number 15 on Form 5, amount of estimated loss if your losses aren't related to real estate, inventory, machine and equipment, or leasehold improvements?
You don't put anything.
Okay. Our losses.
Yeah, one thing that we would just advise is it's okay if you don't know how to answer something. They're not going to throw your application out because of that. So don't get too tied up in that process.
You do have to realize this particular application is used for all their applications.
Yeah.
So that applies to if you were in a hurricane or something and you had a loss of real estate, equipment, inventory, et cetera, et cetera. That question really doesn't apply to economic injury.
Will these loans affect eligibility for the new legislation loans?
Our understanding is that they will not.
Do you know when information about the new legislation loans will be shared, and will the SBA be sharing that or another organization?
The legislation bill is out there for the public to view. I think it's about 1,000 pages long or so. You could do a Google search and find that out there. And then as soon as the SBA has their materials together, I know that they'll also be communicating, as will we at the SBDC.
Yeah, so I'm actually reading the bill. It's 880 pages if you really want to read it. But you have to realize this has not been signed by the House yet. So what we're looking at is the approval by the Senate, not by the final bill. So we're not going to make a lot of comments until it's finally signed, and then we can put together what the actual bill has to do. And I'm sure as soon as that happens, we'll be putting on additional seminars and webinars. And yes, we are going to be the ones to go to for more information.
Can the loan be used to consolidate bills and equipment loans?
My understanding is that you would not use the funds for consolidating current debt, but rather covering expenses that you can't pay because of the disaster.
Is profitability a requirement?
Great question.
I don't think so.
Yeah, we don't understand that to be the case.
Yeah. This is a case where submit the loan application, and when a person gets up with you, you can talk in more detail as to your particular business. Part of it is the profitability. You're talking about tax profitability or actual profitability.
Right.
But I have a feeling the status of the ability to get these loans is a moving target too. So you're best to go ahead and fill out the application, have it in the queue, so that when a loan officer calls, at least you're able to find out more information.
Are the credit scores for the company or the individual?
Tom, do you know for sure?
Well, it's going to be, if the company actually has credit scores, which a lot of companies don't, it's certainly going to be the individual's credit scores. If the company has credit scores, they'll also use that too. Like they might use a DMB score and also a regular personal credit scores.
We just expanded by adding another location. Do we apply separately for each location?
You do one application per entity. So if it's under the same, like EIN, for example, that would be one application, no matter how many locations you have.
What if we have a main location and a foreign entity location? Which should we put on the application?
Tom, do you know the answer?
You're talking about a foreign in another state, I assume, is what you're talking about. The disaster location is going to be wherever your main location is. They may ask for additional information if your foreign location is in a different state, which I assume you mean a different state, not a different country.
Can these loans be paid for services of third parties that assist in the business?
Yes, as long as that's part of your normal operations, yeah.
If a company has enough cash to make it through 1 to 2 months, but those funds would be used while the loan is in progress, will SBA take that into account when we fill out the loan application, since it would be used part of the operating, as part of the operating expenses, payroll, etc.?
Yeah, I think you should go ahead and apply. We have some, businesses who, as of right now today aren't taking a loss, but starting next week they will, and it's in the foreseen future. So you'll fill out this information, and then in the other forms that you see there on the site that you can start to kind of mull through, you'll have the opportunity to explain that situation.
Okay. When the new legislation passes, will the interest rates change from 3.75 to 0?
Not that we're aware of.
Can newly started businesses apply even though there is no long-term revenue history?
The answer is yes. We don't know what, the likelihood of that being approved is, but you can certainly apply.
Given the expected heavy volume, do you anticipate approved SBA lenders will be needed to fill demand, thinking about existing bank customers who are now contacting us about this program?
Our understanding is that the SBA is going to facilitate these specific loans, the economic injury loans, direct in-house and not go through the banks.
Now, I will say under the CARES Act, which is what's going through now, those will be SBA loans initiated by local already established or to be established SBA lenders. So those would be from local banks, where the EIDL, whatever they are, loans are issued directly from the SBA.
Last question, will the quote forgivable loans from the federal stimulus package be considered an EIDL or with the same considerations?
We don't know at this point. They will not be the same as EIDLs, meaning it's a different loan program, but we just are not clear on what those are at this point.
I will throw out that, again, these new loans, everybody keeps throwing out about the grant programs and things like that. There are very specific requirements in the bill that talks about how those are covered and what's not covered, etc. So I would not hold off on applying for these disaster loans, because you can always turn them down if you get to the point that you don't need them, and go ahead and get in the queue. And we should know more, hopefully by the first part of next week, on these particular new loan programs. So then you can make a decision on what one works best for you.
Or do both.
Or do both, if that's available, which we're still reading through the stuff to see.
Great. Well, Amanda and Tom, those are all the questions we have today.
Great. I really appreciate everyone taking time out to understand these and be right along with us as we go through this process.
So, Amanda, do you have a screen that I wanted to let everybody know that Amanda and Tom are part of one of our centers in the Virginia SBDC. We have locations throughout the state of Virginia that are available to help you answer your individual questions as they come up. You can find that information on our website, virginiasbdc.org, with /locations, and that'll put you in touch with the location closest to you. Right now, we're doing all of our one-on-one counseling with business advisors via online, being safe, via Zoom. So please get in touch with folks if you need additional questions answered. I will be emailing out a copy of the presentation to folks after the fact for those that have registered, and we have recorded this webinar for the last couple of questions. So if we don't have any other questions, thank you, Tom and Amanda, for your time today.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye, everyone.